the Cowboys and Jerry Jones or CeeDee Lamb and the Cowboys just in different places right now, and Jerry said some odd things about not being concerned about his star wide receiver, and then that's been retweeted by CeeDee Lamb, who's laughing and putting LOL. So it's sort of contentious at this point. I think eventually they work things out, but Chelsea, they have to. I mean, he is far and away their number one receiver, and if the Cowboys want to get back to where they have their goals set, which is not just to make the playoffs, but to actually get back to the NFC Championship game, which they haven't done since, in 28 seasons? Like, they got to get their number one guy in-house.
Yeah, well, Jerry Jones is already walking back these comments. Have you seen his latest? Like, it's so predictable. Jerry Jones wants to win so bad, so now he's saying he walked back his urgency comments and said, CeeDee Lamb, you're missed. So I think he's trying to pull at the heartstrings of his number one receiver. And here's the thing. They're going to need a lot from their passing game this year because there are a lot of question marks when it comes to the run game. Tony Pollard is gone. Of course, they re-signed Ezekiel Elliott, but, come on. The guy's a little bit older now. I don't think you can really predicate your entire offense on the back of Zeke Elliott anymore. So I think there's going to be a lot of onus on Dak Prescott and the receiving core to get things going through the air. And maybe you could say, well, this team has a great defense. Micah Parsons, I believe, is in what he thinks is a contract year. He's hoping for a new deal. And Trayvon Diggs should be back as well. But if you look at the Cowboys last year, their overall defensive numbers were not great. I believe they were 23rd in EPA. So when you see they give up a bunch of points to the Packers, it's actually not that surprising, despite having some big names on that defense. So I'm not sure what we're looking at, though, for this win total. Jenks, what was the first thing that stood out when you looked at some of these bets? Because for me, 9.5, and you can get that for minus 145. This is a team that's gone exactly 12-5 over the last 3 seasons.
Yeah.
Are we really expecting that big of a drop-off this year?
No, I don't. And I absolutely think the Cowboys can hit this mark. That is a cheap price relative to expectations, right? Because don't we all believe that, at least I certainly do, that the Cowboys have to make a deep run for Mike McCarthy to stay as head coach? We know how disappointing it was last year when they got beat by the Packers in the wild card round. This seems way, way low. I can't figure out why. The only thing I can figure out is that, all right, the defense had some cracks last season, but maybe there's some pullback on their numbers because of the running game. It's going to be running back by committee, essentially. Zeke, Rico Dowdle, Royce Freeman. It's not a murderer's row of running backs, so I think they're going to hurt in that area. But still, when you take the talent on this team into account, when you take the talent on this team into account, they get to 10.
Yeah, especially because the problem with this Cowboys team has not come in the regular season. They have been regular season juggernauts over the last 3 years, winning their division 2 of the last 3 seasons. So I think that's the way you play it. You play the Cowboys in the regular season. The question marks usually come in the first round of the playoffs, and then Dak Prescott turns back into a pumpkin. But maybe looking at other sabotage factors, you can maybe look at the offensive line. They do return 3 starters on a very good offensive line, but Zach Martin is getting older. He's 34 now. And they lost, I believe, Tyron Smith, if I am remembering correctly. So maybe that is where some of this stems from. Because if Dak Prescott is not getting good coverage, and a good offensive line to block him for some of these downfield passes, maybe that's where the problems start. Because I think for a few years now, the Cowboys used to have one of the premier offensive lines in all of football. So everything kind of stems from that, the run game, whatever. And now they're just getting older, and they're starting to be able to not pay all the big contracts of the guys who are performing really well. So it's still a top 10 offensive line, at least according to Pro Football Focus. But maybe that's the other sabotage factor, is the offensive line losing pieces and getting a little older.
I think that's a good point. Tyler Smith is back. He's the anchor at left tackle. Zach Martin is a future Hall of Famer. He's at right guard and made the All-Pro team for the 7th time last year, but he's not in his prime. And then they have a couple rookies they're trying to work in, and Cooper Beebe and Tyler Guyton out of Oklahoma. So I think when you put all of that together, this is how I feel about the Cowboys. When Jerry Jones said during the offseason, we're going all in, And then people were disappointed that he followed that up by only making a couple moves in free agency. When you talk about teams that were active in the free agent market or the trade market, Cowboys didn't really do anything. But that's because they are built to win now. They're not building towards something. They need to win right now, which is A, why they have to sign CeeDee Lamb, and B, why when you look at this roster, it's like, all right, you guys are good for right now. But if you're looking at 2 or 3 years down the line, maybe next year, they are aging and they aren't quite at the peak of their powers just yet, but they are good enough to make a deep run this year. So they have to do it. And if they don't, you know how Jerry Jones is. There are going to be wholesale changes. I think it's the offensive line and the running backs that really concern me most, because if they don't have any semblance of a running game, you don't want teams teeing off on Dak Prescott. So maybe that's the sabotage factor here, but the Cowboys are still good enough to get to 10. I keep coming back to that. That just seems like a low number, but there are some cracks there. 8 years since the Cowboys have made an NFC Championship game. Just imagine Jerry Jones's mindset. He won so easily, had those 3 Super Bowls in 4 years, 2 with Jimmy Johnson, 1 with Barry Switzer. And imagine you have that much success, because I believe he bought the Cowboys in 88, 89, something like that. So in his first almost 5 seasons, 5-6 seasons around thereabouts, he wins 3 Super Bowls. And he's got to think, oh my God, how many Super Bowls am I going to win as owner of this franchise? And now it's been almost 3 decades. First of all, he's got to sign CeeDee Lamb. We know that. He will. Number 2, there are some issues. The real issues for me when it comes to the Cowboys are, A, on that offensive line. They're still stout. They still have a lot of talent there. We know that. They have Zach Martin. That's a future Hall of Famer. Tyler Smith is that anchor at left tackle. But they have a couple of rookies there in Cooper Beebe and Tyler Guyton that they're trying to work in. And then running back-wise, Chelsea, how are they going to run the ball? This is a running back guy by committee, and Zeke Elliott is back. And Zeke Elliott averages what? 3.4 yards per carry or something. He's that quintessential now at this point in his career. Just give Zeke the ball at the 2 or the 1 and let him ram it in for a touchdown. But that's when I look at this team where I think they could have real issues, which is moving the football on the ground. And Dak is very good. I know Dak Prescott gets a lot of criticism. But remember, last year he was second in the MVP voting. Now, the postseason is a different story, but he's still an exceptional quarterback, a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. They have the receiving talent. Mike McCarthy did a nice job calling plays last year, his first season doing that. But I think the real issue, if you're looking for a weak spot for the Cowboys, and they're a little soft in the middle on defense, but it's that offensive line and the running backs. How will they move the football on the ground?